Catholic men, we need you to stop doing this. Listen, I've been an ardent defender of young Catholic men, especially if you listen to any of my podcasts on dating. I share a lot of hot takes and I do a lot of defense of young men. And I think if you see on the internet, or if you're present on the internet, I should say, you see the Andrew Tate of the world, the Andrew Tate types, and their kind of relentless attack on women. And they're constantly calling out things in women, some of which I think are valid and true, others of which can be a little extreme and a little bit off base. But I think some of the critiques we see of women are often pointing to the fact that a lot of women today want to have a traditional family in a sense, but are not preparing themselves to be a traditional wife. And so you see a lot of feminism running deep in the heart of modern day women, while they still want to have a man who provides for them, who protects them and their family, and does the traditional masculine role, while they do not have as much interest in staying home and taking care of the home and beautifying the home and making dinner and serving and doing the things that wives traditionally have done. But this leads me to my point and my issue with a lot of young Catholic men today. I think so many young Catholic men have fallen for this trap, fallen for this ideology, this attempt, or this outlook on our professional lives, that you feel like you have to constantly be emotionally satisfied in your work. And I call this the ministry bias. So this means that if you're a young Catholic man and you're going into college most of the time, you're thinking, if you're into your faith, we've conditioned young Catholic men to believe that if you're into your faith, if you take your faith seriously, if you're somebody who cares about your relationship with Jesus, you love the church, then you either have to be a priest or you have to be a theology major. That those are really the only two options. If you're serious about this, if you want to be a saint, then you have to be a priest or a theology major. And if you're going to be a theology major, you might as well go on after school to be a youth minister, or better yet, a campus missionary or a high school missionary, or you name it, right? You're going to work in some capacity in the church. You're going to make very little money. You're just going to kind of accept that. And I want to push back on that. I remember going through my conversion when I was in college, and anytime you're in some of the more dead dioceses in the U.S., you're going to be told, if you're a young man at daily mass or in adoration or whatever it might be, or sometimes even mass on Sunday, if it's empty and the parish is generally elderly, you're going to hear from somebody, usually an older woman, tell you that you would make a great Catholic priest. Some of them might even tell you in prayer, God revealed to them that you would make a fantastic Catholic priest. And it might be true that you would make a wonderful Catholic priest, but this doesn't mean that this woman's actually a mystic and she's giving you insight to your vocation and that she's settling your vocation question for your life, right? She might just be off base, and that's okay. People make mistakes. Sometimes people just get excited. People act emotionally. And you're going to have that. And you're going to have people who are excited to see a young Catholic man at mass, present, taking his faith seriously. And they're going to want to share that with you. And they're going to tell you, hey, I think you would make a great Catholic priest. But this doesn't mean that you have to be a priest in order to be holy. It doesn't. And I'm certainly not advocating for or trying to discourage anyone from discerning the priesthood or going to seminary. I think those are very, very good things. We obviously need priests. My problem with that mindset that I think is starting to take root because of the feminism that's infiltrated the church, the feminization of the church, I think has pushed a lot of men out of the church. So we don't see a lot of young, especially young men at mass or taking, their faith seriously, taking responsibility and ownership for their faith. And so when people start to see that, then they say, okay, well, our biggest need for men is in the priesthood, right? And then I think the secondary effect of that, the next cause of that is, oh, well, if you can't go be a priest, we still need men running the church. We need men in leadership positions in the church, which is great. I agree with that. I think that can be a good thing. I'm not denying that men being present as youth ministers or as campus ministers or as missionaries is a bad thing. But I do think that we have this bias towards ministry whenever we are serious about our faith. That is not good for the church. It's not good for families. It's not good for society. I think we need Catholics to be present in the world. And this is something that I think Benedictine College is really, really intentional about and really, really amazing at, is they want to transform culture in America. That is their primary mission, one of their big overarching goals. And how do they do that? They create well-formed, serious Catholics that are going to go out into the professional world, go out into different sectors of society, and be amazing. And they're going to evangelize, and they're going to, through their excellence, draw other people closer to God, closer to the church. And then through that, they're also going to, or during that time, during their lives, right, they're also going to have families. They're going to build up strong families, and they're going to create and raise the next generation. to be amazing people, to be great Catholics, and to rebuild culture and reclaim culture in America. And that's awesome. But we can't do that if we're all just constantly staying within our own bubble, within our own little safety net. So that's one of my first problems with this, right? When we have this ministry bias, is that some of us need to go out there into the world. Some of us have to go out and not just stay within these Catholic organizations always, but actually venture out into the world, into the military, into the business world, into these different sectors of business, right? As lawyers and doctors and salesmen and you name it, accountants, right? All the different jobs that we can possibly have. We need to get out there and be present in these different influential spheres. That's the only way we're going to actually start to turn things around, right? By building influence in influential organizations and, parts of the world, right? And parts of culture. As we do that, then we'll start to make a difference in the world in a sincere way, in a serious way. And it doesn't mean, again, this isn't denigrating or saying that being a youth minister is not meaningful work. What I think is the problem here is thinking that it's the only meaningful work. And that really leads me to my primary point and my primary issue with this is that as a Catholic man, you are being formed to either be a husband or a priest. You're either going to be a husband or a priest, a pastor, a religious brother, you name it, right? Those are the two paths of your vocations, right? Those are the only options that we have, essentially. And so what do those mean? What does it mean, even deeper than that, more than what it means to be a husband, a father, a priest? What does it mean to be a man? I really like this definition given by Dr. Leonard Sachs. He's the author of Boys Adrift. I'm going to do more content in the coming weeks on Boys Adrift. I'm thinking about doing an episode per week for a few weeks, just these short little videos on some of my learnings from Boys Adrift, because it really was amazing. And I want to dive deeper into the issue of masculinity in the world. But he talks about this Georgetown Prep School, and it's in Bethesda, Maryland. And they have this kind of theme that they're trying to develop the boys into men. And they ask the question, what does it mean to be a man? The answer taught by them is that being a man means using your strength in the service of others. I want to read further this quote from Dr. Leonard Sachs. He says, that definition, giving all you have in the service of others, is an integral part of the Judeo-Christian tradition that has animated Western history for the past 2 millennia. It is not an original idea. Quote, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Obviously, that's from the Gospels, from John 15, verse 13. No greater love has a man than this, than to lay down his life for his friends, right? Using your strength to the service of other people. This means that your strength as a man is to be used to serve your family, right? Especially if you're going to be a husband and father. If you are called to be a husband and father, your main roles are to lead, to protect, and to provide for your family. Those are kind of the 3 main things that you're called to do. If you're going to provide for your family and you're going to college, why not just at least double major in theology and something else that could be more helpful in providing for your family? Yes, I understand that being a Catholic saint, being a holy man, being knowledgeable of the faith so that you can teach it to your children is incredibly important. But what I'm telling you is you don't need a theology degree. You don't need to go into college debt, to student loan debt, in order to get a theology degree, in order to know a sufficient amount of your faith to be able to pass it on and raise good children. You can learn a lot for free, or at least at a low cost, by reading books, by taking courses and other things that can really form you in the faith. You don't have to major in theology in college in order to be a good Catholic man. More importantly, we know for a fact that those who major in theology, those who study and pigeonhole themselves just in the ability to go out and work for the church, that you build no resume outside of youth ministry and volunteer work in your campus ministry office, you're not setting yourself up for financial success. And the fact of the matter is that with inflation and things like that, life is getting more and more expensive. And we're called to provide for our families. And you can make the decision if you want that your family is going to live in poverty and struggle your entire life. That is an option if that's what you want to do. I don't think it's the right option. I don't think it's the best choice. I don't think you necessarily are doomed to be in poverty if you're going to work for the church perpetually. But I do think we have to start creating a mindset where we're cultivating different options for ourselves, right? Where we're thinking about, okay, I'm called to serve, to protect, provide, and lead for my family. And perhaps God is calling me to do that through serving in the church. And if so, that's great. And there's lots of options and things you can do where you can get creative on how you can continue to provide for your family, despite not making that much in your 9 to 5, right? There are other options. I know a lot of great men who work for the church that become real estate agents, or they're school teachers and they work other jobs in the summer to make more money to kind of offset their ministry work and their ministry pay. that's a very good option, and that could be something that you do. And I want to include that as a heart, as a central part of this message when it comes to providing for your family. That yes, you can still choose to work in ministry, but the reason why a second major, or at least a minor, the reason why internships in other fields can still be helpful is because they can start to help you to find opportunities that can allow you to create enough income that you can still provide for your family, to live comfortably, for your kids to attend Catholic school if that's what you want, or for your wife to stay home if that's what you want, or for you guys to be able to go on vacations, or for them to be able to do things and just live a good life here in the United States. And obviously, you don't have to have a lot of financial means. There was lots of men, and this kind of brings me to my final point here. There was lots of men who raised families that were just kind of scraping by, that lived paycheck to paycheck before paychecks even exist, right? They were just kind of making it, barely, having enough means to live, let alone to thrive and live in a, 4,000 square foot house with a pool. Many, many holy men and women raise kids in such circumstances. So you don't have to be rich. I'm not advocating that you have to be rich. I'm advocating for you to be just mindful of the fact that if you're going to subject your family to financial hardship, you shouldn't do it for this final reason. And this is what I want to get at, because this is at the heart of my issue with a lot of men who have this ministry bias. This is the number one problem that I have, is that a lot of men who have this ministry bias are not doing it, in my opinion, from what I've heard and what I've seen, because they necessarily think it's what God's calling them to. They're not doing that because they think it's what's best for their family. They're often doing it because it's what makes them feel good. And this is my biggest issue with it. There's a lot of men out there who are choosing jobs and career fields for what they think will make them personally happy. And you can tell by the way you talk to them when you ask them about, well, what else would you do for work? Well, I just find working for the church just really makes me happy. It just really helps me feel alive, or whatever. And you hear this kind of this emotions-based argument for why they do what they do. And that's where I start to really have a problem with it. If you feel like God's called you to work in the church seriously through discernment, and you even have options that you want to leave, or you've thought of options of what you would do if you did leave the church or you didn't work in youth ministry, great. I've always told this to my soldiers when I was a platoon leader, and they were considering getting out of the Army. If they were open to not having a career in the Army, if they were thinking about other options, I would say you're not really discerning anything if you don't actually have a second option. You have to think about what you would do if you left the Army in order to actually be discerning anything, because otherwise you just get paralyzed by the fear of thinking about what's out there. I think there's lots of people at Focus Staff and other organizations that have just stayed lifelong ministry people because the idea of going out into the abyss in the corporate world seems daunting and terrifying, understandably so. The same thing is true for a lot of soldiers, where if you're not actually thinking about, okay, if I got out of the Army, I would go back to school and do this, or if I got out of the Army, I would apply for these types of jobs and I would probably get a role doing this and that, and this is how much I think I would like that, this is how much money I think I would make, this is where I could live, this is how much control I'd have of my time, etc. Then you're able to actually side by side evaluate your options. But you can't evaluate your current position in a question mark. You can't evaluate your current position that you know well, that you've been doing for years, and just an absolute mystery, right? Just a cloud of uncertainty. You can't do that. That's not an actual discernment between the two. And so a lot of men, even though I know a lot will object to this and say, oh, no, I have discerned. I know God wants me to do this. If you've never thought about what you'd do if you left, you're not actually discerning anything. We have to actually think of our other options. But the biggest problem for me when it comes to this emotion-based career choosing is that it neglects responsibility for the sake of feeling. And never has a good man become a great man by consistently choosing to promote or prioritize his emotions over his responsibility. Your responsibility is to lead, to provide, and to protect. If you're not able to actually do that, then something's seriously wrong. And if you're choosing to neglect that responsibility because you want to be happy every day when you're at work all day, something's wrong. Something's off in your priorities. You should love your family more than you love your feelings. And I think that's really important to understand and to recognize and accept as a man. Yes, there's harsh realities as a man. You're not always supposed to be happy. God didn't create you to be happy. That's not the primary reason why you exist. God didn't give you a family so that you could be happy. He gave you a family so that you could lead, provide, and protect. That's why you have them. And hopefully your family is a great source of joy, not your work. I mean, your work is great. I mean, some of us are blessed to have work. I feel very fulfilled in my work, and I think that's a huge blessing, but that wasn't always the case. And I reaped a lot of benefits from my time in the military that wasn't necessarily the most fulfilling, wasn't necessarily the thing that made me happiest, believe it or not, when I was freezing and cold water and laying there pulling security for hours on end wasn't something that I said, you know what, this makes me really happy. But we're still to this day reaping the benefits of my service and some of the rewards and benefits we've gotten from me being in the military. And so I think we have to recognize that, again, going back to the church history, right? Many men have raised great families and holy families that did not have a lot of means. They lived lives of poverty, of simplicity, and they had beautiful, holy families that were loving, close. They had holy marriages, and they raised great children, some of which even went on to become saints. What's also true is that many men chose to live lives of sacrifice, of duty and responsibility, of honor and integrity, and they worked jobs that didn't bring them immense fulfillment. They worked jobs in oil fields and as farmers and as uh, you know, all types of different trades and skilled and sometimes just brute manual labor that provided for their families but didn't necessarily make them feel all warm and fuzzy inside. And they prioritized providing for their family over saying, oh, I'm going to go do something that makes me happy. I'm going to go find myself. I'm going to do something that brings me life. Let God bring you life. Let your family, your wife, and your children, God willing, bring you life. That is where we should draw our purpose. That's where we should draw our passion. And the other things are just bonuses. Everything else we have is just a great bonus. Many of us are blessed to live here in the 21st century in the United States because we have the opportunity to live extremely comfortable and blessed and abundant lives. Not many people have had this opportunity. And what's even more important than that to me, if you've ever been on mission trips, if you've ever seen true poverty, which I've had the blessing to see in the Dominican Republic and Nicaragua and in Afghanistan, when you see true poverty, you understand our responsibility as Americans is not just to be happy, but we're actually supposed to continue to produce and provide and create opportunities for other people that draw people out of poverty, that draw people out of poverty and help them to create new opportunities and create better lives for themselves, and to send some of our surplus overseas in donations and donating to the church in the Middle East, in South America, in Central America, in Africa. We have opportunities that many people in African countries, that many people in the Middle East, that many people in impoverished South American and Central American countries never have. And the fact of the matter is this: while nonprofits can do a lot of great and amazing work, they don't lift people out of poverty. They can ease their poverty. They can make it a little bit more bearable, but they don't lift people out of poverty. And lifting people out of poverty is not the number one thing in the world. The salvation of souls and spreading the gospel is. There's no denying that. But let's not act like lifting people out of poverty is not remotely on Jesus' priority list. It is. And capitalism and working in the for-profit sector, starting businesses, creating jobs for people, it's actually a really, really good thing. And we can recognize that if you employ 10 employees, you start a company where you give 10 people jobs, that's a beautiful thing. You allow 10 people, 10 men and women, or 20, however many, to provide for their families, to give their kids education and take their kids to enjoy different experiences and become well-rounded and good humans. That's a good thing. That's a really good thing. And we should affirm that, and we should recognize that. So I just want to encourage you today, if you're a young Catholic man out there discerning what you're going to do with your life, create a backup plan that allows you to enter the workforce in the corporate world or in some capacity that can allow you to really provide for your family in a meaningful way that will satisfy you, God, and create opportunities to serve other people that you might not have imagined before. So just want to give a different perspective on this. Hope you found this helpful. If you did, would love if you subscribe, share this video with a friend, like the video, subscribe to the Seeking Excellence podcast for more content like this, and be sure to check out my future videos on Boys Adrift, where I'll be dissecting a lot of the issues with the way we're raising boys and why we have this problem of masculinity that we're seeing in the Western world today. God bless you. Continue to fight hard to be your best.